Having been dining out, so to speak, on this story for 30 years, I beg for forgiveness from you and the team. More importantly, from my husband. Let's call him Pete to protect his identity. Just to remind you, there's a PG on this.
Okay.
Is
that because of food?
No.
Okay.
It's a biological thing.
Oh, good.
Ooh.
Whilst my husband knows I've told a few people this story over the years, he probably doesn't realise just how often I have retold the story at his expense. Hence, I will tell it one more time to you and your listeners, then you can judge whether I was wrong to do what I did, okay? 30 years ago, I was expecting our first child, and having driven home from a holiday in Ireland in late October, we arrived home early in the morning, rather tired and weary, having been on the overnight ferry. We went straight to bed. Being pregnant, I was shattered, stayed in bed, while Pete later got up and was preparing for his usual Saturday, following his beloved Luton Town Football Club. Of course, as any wife will know, there is a sacred pre-match ritual which hasn't changed for decades. Step 1, get up, go and get the newspaper. Step 2, have a big breakfast, make several phone calls to your mates, making arrangements which sometimes involve speaking in tongues or secret codes. Sometimes calls involve having to go into the garage or the shed, as the mobile has a better signal there.
Really?
Step 3, offer to do small, and I repeat, small jobs around the house, but only if Luton are at home. Step 4, when I ask, what time will you be home, we end up playing the try and pin him to a time for dinner game, where he will say, well, I've got to meet a man about a job. It's Bert's birthday, I need a pint with him. Dave is over from Peterborough, I haven't seen him for ages. Or, last week Chris ran over a squirrel, and we're having a wake. And so after 30 years, we skip step 4, I don't make dinner. Step 5, get shaved, washed and dressed. Step 6, ask for a lift to the pub, as it's not possible to go straight to the match, because apparently it's bad luck. And of course, you can't ask the question straight out, that's against the rules. So he will ask, are you popping to your mum's later? Or, we could look at wallpaper this morning if you like. Or, would you like to go out for Sunday dinner tomorrow to save you cooking? The list is endless when you've been married for 33 years. Anyway, we were at step 5 when it happened. I was asleep in bed when suddenly there was a blood-curdling scream. I shot out of bed, and as I stood at our bedroom door, I saw my husband staggering across the landing, naked, except for a small towel around his waist. "What?" I shouted. "What?" As he stood, sweaty and pale. With that, he dropped his towel and gestured downwards. And on the end of his Mr. Happy, suspended upside down like one of those extreme rock climbers you see on television, was a queen wasp.
What? Oh, what?
No, that's terrible.
It appears the wasp had found its way into the airing cupboard, as it was nice, quiet and warm. Somewhere to hibernate among the towels. Pete had just got out of the shower and wrapped the fresh towel around his waist and was mid-shave when he felt something tickle. So he had a scratch.
Yeah.
This almost proved fatal. So not wanting to startle the wasp, afraid it would sting him again, with my husband frozen to the spot and unable to speak, I edged slowly, very slowly, and got closer and closer, with my finger and thumb poised like a coiled spring. I got ready to flick the wasp away. Pregnant ninja-like, I crept nearer until I was about half a centimetre away, and kapow! The offending creature was propelled across the landing and onto the floor, and I threw the towel over the wasp. Then as Pete dropped to his knees in relief, looking a ghostly white, and with his lips trembling muttered, "How long have I got?" I snapped back, "It's a wasp, not a rattlesnake." For the purposes of decency, and so as not to offend listeners, the aforementioned Mr. Happy will now be referred to as Malcolm.
Okay.
Pete and Malcolm were in shock. Pete staggered across the bedroom and lay down on the bed, hyperventilating. I laughed unsympathetically, hysterically in fact, but Malcolm's head had begun to swell. We had no choice but to go to A&E. He had to ring his friends to explain that he would be late for the match. On arrival at Accident and Emergency, the hospital were carrying out building works and diversion signs were in place. But as we walked around the hospital, we took a wrong turn and ended up in a ward. I started to blurt out the story as to why Pete was in pain and walking funny, only to be told we were in the wrong department and we were kindly redirected. However, once we'd arrived in the relevant department, the staff were giggling in huddles and pointing at Pete as he walked through A&E like John Wayne, having just dismounted after driving cattle non-stop across America for 2 weeks. Once inside a small cubicle, the doctor arrived, and after inspecting Malcolm, decided on an injection into the swollen area. I left the cubicle in pain and unable to breathe myself. I wasn't in labour, but I was doing exactly that noise that Matt was doing, stifling my laughter. Like any true fan, he was determined not to miss the match, and met his mates later on. Days, weeks and years followed of Mickey taking and inappropriate jokes at his expense. So please, I beg forgiveness for these friends as well, who are indeed still the same group of friends from over 30 years ago. As for Malcolm, there were sadly no lasting effects and he made a complete recovery. So, Father Simon and team, I await your verdict. Am I forgiven, please? Well, there you go. Could happen at any time. You have to check the airing cupboard. You never know quite what's going to come out when you wrap a towel around you. You have to take precautions. Who knew that Malcolm was an acceptable...
Yeah.
It made things easier, I suppose.
It did.
Anyway, Sister Bobby.
Imagine what it was like for the Wasp. I mean, their point of view. It's pretty tough as well.
Well, I don't think, even in the interest of balance, we have to consider the Wasp.
What I was trying to do is... Wendy, thank you for a really
The
great
Queen
story.
Wasp maybe had a great time.
Anyway, I love this.
That's a dream
It's got to
day
be
for a
one of the
Queen Wasp.
funniest ever. It's not often that Matt and I are really reduced both to tears at the same time for as long, and the whole gallery. So thank you for a great story. So on our behalf, Wendy, I say thank you very much for this story and making us laugh. And Pete, thank you for your forgiveness for allowing it to be retold, because I think it should be told time and time again whenever anyone's down. It's a brilliant story. You are forgiven.
The thing is, with all the 6 steps about what it's like to support Luton Town at home,
Yes.
was no warning at all as to what was coming
What I
next.
loved most of all is that image of you've got a very pregnant Wendy, obviously naked from the bed, wondering what's gone on, and you've got another naked man. And, you know, the rest of it, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful vision.
What
Thank
a
you very
beautiful
much.
picture that was.
Yes.
I'm sure I won't be the only person after that story who's going to be checking rather hard the towel before I put it on after I come out of the shower tomorrow morning. I'm going to say...
Particularly now, sleepy wasps.
Sleepy wasps.
Sleepy wasps.
Yes, coming as they do in the end of September.
They're particularly
Better
keen.
not be anywhere near my airing cupboard. So I am obviously going to forgive, because that is the funniest... That is one of the... Certainly, I think that's the funniest confession we've done this year. That is superb. Definitely going to forgive. And yes, you should. If I had that story, I would be wheeling that one out every dinner, anytime anyone comes out. Did I ever tell you the story about the wasp?
That's precision flicking as
It
well,
is.
isn't it?
Yes,
From
Wendy has done very well with because that could have anyway. Yeah, it doesn't thingy about. Yes, definitely.